Hello everyone, it's Sister Shauna once again, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel here on Love in the Pot. I know it's been a while, but as we're going into the fall, I would like to show you guys some soup concepts. These things are simple, could be done with things that are grown in your garden, or soups are also a great way to get rid of odds and ends in the fridge. Today, I happen to have some things that did come from my garden that I need to use. I grew pumpkins this year, and I don't typically eat pumpkins, but I'm pretty comfortable in eating them in soup. So we're gonna make a hearty pumpkin soup as well as a creamy chicken chowder. Now, I'm gonna break this class into two segments, so I hope you will stay patient and continue to check me out. We'll begin with roasting our pumpkin and fabricating that first. Our second step is starting our homemade stock or broth, and we'll fabricate our chicken and go from there. You could totally make this recipe a lot shorter by using pre-purchased pumpkin and also by using purchased broth or stock to trim out the work. Give you some tips to show you how to do it a little simpler on your own. So let's begin. See here, I have a variety of fresh produce. These things are interchangeable, but as far as the base of any good soup, it's primarily mirepoix, which is celery, carrot, and onion, as well as fresh garlic and stock. And then you can go from there to tweak it and make it your own. I'm literally working with what I have on hand. Of course, I have my base aromatics, already done prepped and cleaned everything. I have my carrots, which I've peeled. I love to cheat and make myself some garlic puree. This one has herb in it. For my chowder, I totally forgot to buy corn, so I have some corn cobs. I'm gonna just cut the kernels off of that. So here are our foundational products, and I am gonna roast my pumpkin. Yes, I grew the help of my son. So we're going to begin by seeding the pumpkin and roasting it. And allowing it to oven roast will make it easier to work with. When it's done and nice and tender, I'm going to use half for the soup and half for pumpkin muffins. So it's very versatile when you do these things at home because you can manipulate your product how you choose and you'll get more volume. Also, I have some purchased butternut squash pieces. I bought it like this from the fresh produce section of my market, and it really wasn't that much. As a matter of fact, this was on sale for 99 cents. So take a look at your market, buy what's seasonal, buy what's a great bargain, and make it work for you. And that's what I'm doing here. I use some of this in my hearty chicken chowder and save some for the pumpkin soup as well. By splitting it in half, I'm just going to avoid the stem. And when you grow these things fresh, they last so much longer. I picked this like 2 months ago, and it hasn't even been refrigerated, and yet it held up. Okay, so now we're going to scoop out the innards. You could totally rinse out the seeds from the membrane and toast those if you like. And I'm just going to take a spoon and scrape them out. I have a trash bag right here, or a bowl or something to put the waste in. Got my pumpkin cleaned out here. We're going to repeat for this one. I cleaned up the seeds and dried them out and planted more pumpkins from that. So it would definitely be a great idea to do that, especially during these times when there are food shortages popping up everywhere. That's actually why these are called winter squash. They grow in the summer, but because they can hold during the winter so that you have food to eat, they're called winter squash. Just gonna line this pan with foil. I have both my clean pumpkin halves. I'm going to place them on here. This one I'm going to leave it as it is and just turn it upside down. And for this one, I'm going to drizzle a little olive oil and add a sprinkle of salt and pepper. This will be the one I'll save for making my pumpkin muffins. And this will be the savory half we'll add to our soup. A little olive oil, a little salt, right in the cavity, and a little pepper. And you could even throw a few cloves of garlic in there and let that roast at the same time to add some nice roasted garlic flavor. So we'll put them open side down so the flesh can steam and cook faster. And this will be where we'll begin with our part 2 segment. So this is it for our pumpkin soup for today. You'll have to remember to tune back in to watch the continuation. I'm roasting in a 375-degree oven. If you hear it beep, it's because it hasn't come to temp just yet, but it's totally fine. Now we're going to move to prepping our chicken for our creamy chicken chowder. And what I'm showing you really is how you would prep in order. Start with whatever takes the longest to cook, prep that out first, and then while that's cooking, start working on the next thing that doesn't take quite as long. And then you'll end up with the finished product around the same time frame. So this is how you multitask in the kitchen. This is how you would do some things to help yourself ahead for meal prep if you are working to make more than one meal option in a day. This is a great example of making 2 or 3 meals at once. You can even have half of the chicken used in the chicken chowder. The other half could be reserved for chicken chili or chicken fajitas or something of that nature. You would just season it neutral, like salt, pepper, and garlic, and then add the final touches to it when you make your final dish. So that's one way to help you tackle making several meals at once. Okay, now let's prepare to work with our chicken. I have gloves on hand, so since I have them, I like to use them when I'm working with raw meat. Just makes easier cleanup. It makes for less opportunity to cross-contaminate. It just helps. So that's what I'm gonna do. I also have me a little baggie right here that I'm putting my waste in. I want to mise en place and have everything ready to go before you start. Like I have my board set up. I already washed my sink, rinsed it, plugged it, put lemon juice and water in it before touching the chicken. I made sure I had my waste bag ready, and I made sure I have a dish to cook the chicken in before I begin. So this is all how you would minimize cross-contamination, which is spreading harmful bacteria from one food object or surface to another. So here we go. My chicken has been sitting here in this water that has lemon juice in it. You can clean the chicken however you choose. I have boneless, skinless thighs. One way I really like to do this is just do it with the shears to get the fatty stuff off and the unwanted pieces. But because I need to dice the chicken anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and dice it while I'm handling it. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to just remove the excess fat and anything I don't want. And dice the chicken. And my chicken was only in the lemon water for a couple of minutes. Okay. Now I'm going to cut it into strips and then make dices. It's a lot easier to do when it's partially frozen, honestly. Another thing I'm going to do to help speed up my prep time and things I'm working with, instead of sauteing the chicken, I'm going to let the oven do that work for me, and I'll spend that time prepping out my diced veggies as opposed to trying to, use that time to pan saute the chicken. Of course, I like that flavor, but you can achieve it in the oven as well. Just make sure your temperature's high enough. Using a brine to help chicken thigh is much more forgiving and it's really more flavorful. could also make fish chowder, same principle, same concept. I would just make sure that you use a nice firm flaky fish. Salmon is nice, halibut is nice. Dice it up and add that in closer toward the end. And you could ask your fishmonger or your meat market, wherever you're getting your proteins from, if they sell the fish bones or skin, and you can boil it down to concentrate your stock, because we'll be making stock today, but that would just add a boost of flavor. Which honestly, we could have done the stock first before fabricating the chicken. That would have made more sense. But I also have stock base that I like to buy in concentrate form, and I will be adding it to enhance ours. So I don't really need it to boil quite as long. It will definitely be more tasty than just using water, which is why I'm taking this step to make that broth. But I'll be able to enhance it more with the stock base. If you don't have stock base, I suggest you start your broth rather, first, before roasting your pumpkin and before fabricating your chicken. Okay, that was the last of our meat. For now, I'm gonna get this area cleaned up. If your dishwasher is empty, you can load as you go. I recommend that you make sure the dishwasher is empty, or you have like a bus tub bin or a big empty bowl to put your dirty things in as you're working. But you will need a clean sink for washing your hands and cleaning your clothes, or whatever the case may be. I'm literally scrubbing the handle, scrubbing the faucet, cleaning the sink. I'm going to clean it once again with spray once I'm done. Okay, back to you with clean hands. I'm going to add a little bit of our garlic herb oil. It's just like a teaspoon. A little olive oil. A little bit brown on the top. A good bit of garlic powder. Or I prefer granulated garlic. My apologies. Granulated garlic. Some pepper. This all can be done to taste. A little salt. This is Himalayan pink salt. Toss it all together. Put it in an even layer. And then add a little water. And we'll also add that liquid to our soup for added flavor. I'm gonna wash my hands after I put this in the oven. Have some Clorox wipes on hand to just wipe this once more to make sure we're good to go. Although I had just cleaned it, but you can never be too careful. Alrighty, let's head to the stove and start our stock. Okay, I'm back. I have a standard like 8-quart pot, 6 or 8 quart pot. And this is what I love to do. I do not like to waste food. So as I'm making things throughout the week, I will put like my onion peel, see my celery, my carrot peels, the little nubs at the end of the parsnip, my parsley stems, whatever the case may be, in a zip baggie. I'll typically label it and date it, so that when I'm ready to make some broth, I have everything I need right here, and I can just add a few aromatics to it. So that's what we're gonna do. Sorry, my belly's bumping things I'm expecting. Okay, dump this in. It looks like a lot, but that's okay. I'm gonna add a few pepper flakes or peppercorn, a little thyme, Cover it with water and bring it to a boil. Once it boils, we're going to turn it down to a simmer and just let the flavors come out of the veggies. You want to let it simmer for at least 30 minutes. Okay, let's do it. Pepper flakes, crushed pepper flakes, and water. Start your broth with cold water. This is the period where you can add extra flavors that you like. If you're making like a tortilla chicken soup, you can add some jalapeno if you want, whatever you like to do. But I like to keep things neutral so that I have more flexibility and can use it however I choose when I need it. We're going to let it start and begin to boil while we begin our veggie prep for the chowder. The chowder is actually going to be very quick. So now that it's going, by the time we're done prepping over there and we get the foundation of our chowder going, it'll be time to strain this to add it in. Okay, everybody, let's get started. I'm back. I have my cutting board. I have my chef's knife. Remember, this is a soup duo. So we will finish fabricating the things for our pumpkin soup next time. So for tonight, we'll be working with the items for our chicken chowder. I'm going to start with some of the less messy components, which will be the celery. So half of this celery I'm going to save for my pumpkin soup. And some I'm going to put in the chowder. You can cut it however you choose. I think I'm just going to keep it simple and do the half moons. Remember, always curl your fingers. Typically, I do not work from bowls. This is for TV only. I usually work from a sheet pan and do all my prep and just load it in rows on the sheet pan. I'm going to take a couple of carrots. If your carrot has a bad spot, just cut it out. Add it to your stock. Okay. The small pieces I'll do in circles. The big ones I'll do in half moons. And be mindful of the cook time of things. You don't want to cut it too chunky and then it takes a long time to cook once you put it in. So just be mindful that your cuts are consistent and everything's cut at about the same size or the same thickness. Take these scraps and add it to my broth. You can totally add that innard right to your broth base as well. Next, we'll do some of our peppers. These cute little peppers, they're from my garden, and it, of course, as the weather's getting cooler, you can tell the plant was like not producing as well without having that heat, but it's still been putting out peppers. So I have a variety of peppers. These are little bitty poblanos, purple sweet bell pepper. These are havasu peppers. They're like a spicy banana pepper. So we'll just cut up some of these things, save some also for our pumpkin soup. I like having a nice mix. I have some sweet pepper and I have a little bit of savory or hotter peppers, but you can do whatever you like. You can turn the same base into chicken and dumpling by replacing that starch with the dumpling. So cooking is very method based. Once you can implement the method, you can use it however you need it. It's all very similar. Next, we'll do our onion. And I do have some onion already that I've been working with throughout the week, so we're going to cut that. There's no need to be wasteful. Oops. We're doing this home style. This is literally how I would do it. I'm not going to use something new when I have some of the same product already that's been opened up or used. You don't want to be wasteful. I'm gonna put another towel under my board. We're all slippery here. There we go. I'm gonna go turn my pot down to a simmer. All right, I'm going to do another half. Next we'll do the corn. I'm just going to remove the kernels. Try not to get too close to the core so that they're not tough kernels. Just going to separate these a little and add them to my pepper bowl. Alright, I have some fresh basil. It smells so good. Some of this we're going to put in our pumpkin. And the thyme you don't have to really chop. Chopping it will just help the flavors disperse a little better. So add that, and my stems I'm going to go throw right into my broth pot. And I showed you how to do this before. You just pull against how it grows, just like that, to get them off. Some parsley would have been really nice. I chose not to buy it because it just looked terrible in my market, so I didn't choose parsley. But I absolutely love having parsley in my chowder. Sometimes you can't be afraid to modify and go with what is best or with what is seasoned. Then you'll have a better end result. You just have to have it. You could certainly do dried parsley, but I believe it has no flavor. It's worthless to me. Alrighty, now we have all our components and we're ready to move to the cooktop. So I'll see you over there. I'm back. As you can see, our broth is boiling away. You can already tell the color is getting darker. By the time we are ready to add it to our soup, it will be ready. We're moving to our pot here to create the soup. I'm going to turn it on medium heat, and I'm going to begin to soften our garlic, get essential oils going out of it, soften the onion and the celery to get those foundation flavors in there, and we'll build a roux off of that. One great trick that I like to do when making homemade soups, especially for the visual end result, I like to reserve about a third of all my fresh items to add in close to the end, maybe like in its last 15 minutes, so that the veggies still have some vibrancy. The only thing I might not do that with is the carrot, so that I can make sure they're tender. I'm going to add a little butter and olive oil. I like the butter for the flavor, but to trim out some of the fat, we'll build our roux with half olive oil, half butter. Extra virgin olive oil, but of course you use what you like and what you have. I'm going to add to this our onion, a little of the garlic, some fresh thyme, a little bit of our spices to kind of wake them up. But I know I'm going to have to add more spices to it. So for a little bit of heat, I'm going to add a pinch of the pepper flake. Take some time and pull these off. We're just building flavor. my chowder is going to be based with stock and cream. I may add a little half and half too, but I don't like to make chowder with milk. You need some fat. Add some of those onions, celery, peppers, some Old Bay. Add a little of that. Salt. Remember, you're making a pot of soup, okay? So, of course, be mindful not to add too much, but we don't want it under seasoned. And then keep in mind too, if you use the broth base, this is broth base concentrate, it is a little bit salty. So this, adding this in, I may not need to add more salt later. It's always best to taste it and tweak it. A little garlic powder, a little onion powder, a pinch of cumin, that's my preference. And now our garlic paste. About a spoonful. Probably have to add more later. And before the garlic starts to brown, we're going to add our flour and start to form a roux. If you want more tips on roux, check out my Meatloaf for a Feast video, and I go more in depth on working with that. I have AP flour, not still rising. Add about half a cup. Check our broth. I'm sorry, it's broth, it's not stock. It's looking good. I want to give it a little longer so we can start the foundation of our soup with our cream. I have some half and half, and I also have more heavy cream to reinforce that rich, thick flavor that I want while we're waiting on our broth. I may just add a splash of water so that this doesn't get too thick on us. What I recommend that you do is turn it down on low at this point before adding the liquid, because it's going to start to congeal and thicken as soon as liquid goes in there. Let me show you what we look like now. This is the state of our veggies and our flour oil mixture. This is the base of our roux. I just did it with the aromatics and some of the seasonings in the pot to kind of awaken the flavors. But technically it's still a roux. So my pan is turned down. Now I'm going to add a little bit of water. I'm really waiting on our broth to finish up to intensify the flavors. 2 cups of water. Work that in before I add my cream. You just want to keep it moving. Hopefully you can see, and break up those clumps. So I'm going to continue this process until there are no lumps and it's nice and smooth. And before this starts to get thick, I'm going to add some half and half. About half a quart. See? No lumps. So that's the key, to turn it down so that it doesn't get thick instantly. In the meantime, I want to take a look at our chicken. Now, we are using chicken thighs, so they're more forgiving. So if they cooked a little longer than I wanted, it's really no big deal unless you dehydrated them. But that's why we added the water. That gives me cushion to do other things, and I'm not pressured to worry about overcooking the meat. The chicken thighs are technically done, but since they're in lots of juice, I'm going to give it just a moment to make sure I smooth out this base. Okay, now I'm going to add about a cup of cream. You could totally do this with all half and half in broth, but I just want to enrich it. Since I know I'm adding broth, I want it to be a bit more rich. Another thing, ideally, I would love to put bay leaf in this, but I'm all out of bay leaf and I didn't realize it. However, it's going to be okay. Bay leaf is in the Old Bay seasoning, and also I've added fresh thyme, fresh herbs, fresh garlic to bump up those flavor points. So I'm certain it's not going to be lacking at the end. What we're going to do is get our chicken out of the oven. Check our pumpkin. Pumpkin is very close to being done. I'm going to leave it in for maybe about 5 more minutes and then let it rest and become room temperature before storing it. And as it's cooling, it's going to cook a little bit more. So I don't want to cook it to mush, but I want it to be easy to get out of that shell. All right, now as far as our broth, it's done. I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to set up a straining station to strain it out. Use a mesh strainer to strain our broth so we can get all of the pulp and big chunky pieces of veggies out. We don't want that in our soup. Okay, straining the broth. We'll get the rest later. Nice. Okay. Okay. I added probably about 4 cups of broth. Now we can turn up the heat and bring it to a boil. Broth is in. I have some left over for our pumpkin soup. So I'm going to allow this to cool and store it away. So now that we've got all of our liquid in, we can turn up the heat, and we know that we're not going to have any lumps and clumps because we dissolved the roux base before increasing the heat. So at this point, I scrape my corners, make sure there's nothing sticking. Get my carrots in, and more of the celery. I want to add all the carrots. Carrots are going to be the longest cooking thing. Our meat's done. Everything else are nice tender veggies. Some more peppers for flavor. I'm going to add my corn in at the end. Most of it anyway. Add a little bit of this butternut squash. Turn off the oven and take my pumpkin out so it can begin to cool. And really, it's just that simple. At this point, you're just adjusting the flavor profile, waiting for the soup to thicken, waiting for the veggies to get tender and start to impose their flavor in there. And once I get the consistency where I want it, I'm going to add the chicken. That way I can see how much of the chicken liquid I want to use to add the residual chicken broth to my stock, because I plan on serving that pumpkin soup with sausage, chicken sausage crumbles. And also my veggie stock bag did have turkey wings in it. So literally, I tell you, I don't waste anything. Totally make it vegan if you need to make it vegan. This soup could be vegan as well. Just add in mushrooms instead of the chicken. Do some oven roasted mushrooms with the garlic and the herbs and things to bring the flavors to life. And then add that in towards the end and save some for a topping so you'll have that contrasting taste. My soup's nearly thick enough. I'm going to add my gnocchi so that they can get tender and have time to boil and get nice and soft. And they'll also allow this to thicken further. I don't want it to be gloppy, but I do want it to be a nice creamy chowder. See? Little gnocchi potato dumpling. The hard work of the gnocchi has already been done. Maybe one day I'll show you how to make them from scratch, but not today. I'm going to add some smoked paprika. Can be regular paprika, but I like smoked paprika. I'm going to add a little bit more of our garlic herb puree, a little bit more Old Bay, the last of this rather, pinch more garlic powder, not too much because I do want to taste the nice sweetness of the cream, and some pepper. I also added a pinch more salt. Remember, taste it and tweak it. And I'm going to add lemon juice also once it becomes thick. We still haven't come to a full boil yet, but once it boils, I'll be able to tell what the thickness is. If it's not quite thick enough, I can make a quick roux or simple slurry, which would be water and flour, and just whisk it until the flour is completely dissolved into a watery paste before adding it. Just know that anytime you add the flour as a form of thickening, you need to allow it to boil. Then you can see how thick your item is. You can certainly use cornstarch, but I don't prefer cornstarch because it tends to become gelatinous, and especially if you reheat the next day, sometimes the consistency won't be quite right. It'll still be kind of jelly-like, or I've even seen it get watery after being stored in the fridge. So cornstarch isn't my preference for this application. I'm going to taste it and tweak it, and once we're at our thickness, we'll be ready to add our components. I actually want to make it just a tiny bit thicker, so I have flour and water, and I'm just going to completely whisk it until it is lump free. It came to a boil. As you can see, it's a nice thickness. It would be perfect, but I know I'm going to add some veggies in there, and they're going to give off a little liquid. So that's why I want to tighten it just a little bit more. Definitely don't want to add any clumpy slurry. It'll just make lumps in your chowder. This part can be to your preference. This is how I want to see it. Therefore, I thickened it to my liking. I'm going to let you take a look and see the thickness now. It's nice. Perfect for chowder. Okay, at this phase, we're about halfway done. I'm going to taste it, see what seasonings I need to add. It's pretty good. Now that it's thicker, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of lemon juice. You can use fresh squeezed lemon. This is a quick family night dinner, so I'm using the juiced lemon. You definitely don't want to do this before the sauce thickens because it could make your soup split. And remember, we have to cook off that raw flavor of the flour. Now I'm going to start getting my chicken thigh pieces in there. Turn the heat down a little. And strain the rest to go to our pumpkin soup for later in the week. Okay, now the flavors are really going to develop that we've added that chicken. Hopefully we'll have room to get everything else in there. Celery and onion. Woo. And very carefully add in our corn. It's so full. Okay, I'm not going to be able to add all of that. Add some of our chopped herbs. Now we want it to simmer. You definitely don't want it to boil. As you can see, it's very full. It will bubble out. If I have to, I'll take some out and put it in a smaller pot, like our stock pot, so that I can speed up the cooking time if I need to. That's an option if your pot is too short and you got a little heavy-handed like me. Let this simmer for about 10-15 minutes and give it a taste. While you're waiting on this to cook, go ahead and clean your kitchen. Finish loading that dishwasher, tidy up, and then when it's time to bowl and serve, you can sit and relax. All right, I'm gonna go do just that. I am all done. I did end up having to split the pots because they were overfilled. I should have added a little less fresh veggie. But needless to say, I'd rather have more than less, so I split the pot. And I am ready to garnish and serve. I tell you, you make this, you won't want the canned chowder anymore. Best of all, you know what's in it. You know the product is clean, it's kosher, and you use the best quality ingredients you had access to. So take a look. It's really nice and thick and creamy. Mind you, it's very hot, so it's going to be a little thicker when you serve it. But that is the way you can serve this with garlic bread, fresh warm yeast rolls, and compound butter, and even biscuits. That's what we're having tonight because that's what I got. All done. Here I have the remainder of our broth, which we'll use for our pumpkin soup. Let this finish cooling, And here are our roasted pumpkins. See? They're nice and tender to the touch. We'll allow these to finish cooling before storing. And when we're ready to work with it, all I have to do is scoop it out and add it to my soup. I believe I'm going to do like a puree base to go in that, but we'll see what happens on that day. Hey, I may change. All right, so now I'm going to gather our soup and start to bowl, and we can get ready to eat. Little bowl here. I have my lovely homemade chowder. Take a look. Loaded with veggies. This is great for a nice cool day. I'm just going to add some of our fresh chopped herbs that was left over. I'm garnish it with a little cracked pepper and serve it with a roll, biscuit, breadstick, whatever you like. Always wipe the brim. Serve a pretty plate. Just like that, we're all done. We've made homemade hearty chicken chowder with gnocchi instead of potato, and we've also started ourselves up for our next soup, which will come in my next video. So I hope that you will come back and finish checking that out, and I'll do a couple more videos on soup as well. After all, it's fall time, perfect time to get ready to make hearty soup. So feed your family for a day or two, or you can make a pot and send it to a loved one. I'm sure that will really warm their heart. So much. I really appreciate you joining me today here on Love in the Pot. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and check me out on Instagram. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to tune in next time.